Where do I start? Okay, it's just so gorgeous to see you all here in this one room, lots of smiley faces. I remember when Bernie was visioning this place a few years ago. I was thinking, well, yeah, what could it be? How could it work? And it was all about the people, all the people that would come. And that dream has come true. This is your dream manifested. It's brilliant. So I'm very honoured to be here actually speaking to you all. So just for those of you who have no idea who I am, I thought I'd start with a story. I'm the quiet one, by the way, out of this partnership. So when you get to the second half of this talk, Seth is a mindfulness teacher, but he's very exuberant. So I'll just keep it nice and calm, and we'll go into a nice calm session, and then Seth might change it up a little bit when he comes on. So me, my spiritual journey, I guess, started 15 years ago. And I was living on the south coast of England, and I was working in newspapers. And I had a very high-powered job. You know, to everybody else's eyes, I was living a dream. I was living the success story. I had the car, the house, the job, the first practice marriage, if you want to call it that. To everybody else, it looked like I was having a ball. And my job was involved coming up with the headlines for newspapers. So I would sit with the editor of the paper every day, and we would work together, and I would come up with the headlines that you see outside newsagents, which, are meant to stop traffic. So the good thing about that was I had a very swift education in fast marketing. The downside of that was that they were all very negative words, because it wakes up the amygdala, wakes up the fear center of the brain, which stops you in your tracks and makes you want to do something to quell the pain. So it was an immersion in negative language, and I got very good at writing negative language. So that was all well and good, and it certainly paid the bills, but when I looked in the mirror every day, I saw somebody who I didn't want to be anymore, because I was having to kind of bend myself out of shape to live somebody else's version of success. Anybody done that in the room? There's always quite a few people in the room. So yeah, I was looking in the mirror and I was seeing this mask. It wasn't me. It wasn't the person that I knew I was inside. A little bit woo-woo. I was kind of, exploring the spiritual path, and yet here I was in a business suit having to make presentations and blah, blah, blah. So there came one day when I thought, I can't do this anymore. I just can't be this person. I wasn't being me. I wasn't being authentically me, and that, to me, is everything. That's success. And the next day I went in and I handed in my notice. My boss was absolutely speechless, literally speechless, couldn't speak for the whole meeting. So and he said to me, "Are you really sure?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm sure." And he said, "Okay, that's fine. I'm going to keep your job open for 9 months and see if you want to come back." And I said, "Well, that's very kind of you, but I'm not going back. I'm off." So I did actually leave, and I moved to Scotland, I went to stay with Seth, who was one of my oldest friends, and he was a perfect gentleman. And you would think, having done something like that and taken all the signs from the universe that I was going to follow my passion and become a writer, and the purple feather being the quill, and purple being the highest spiritual colour, presumably, you'd think that I would actually follow that advice, wouldn't you? You'd think I would listen and I would do what I'd promised to do. Nah. I didn't do it, because inside my head I'd failed. I had completely failed in the eyes of the world. I'd walked away from a lucrative career. I had moved to another country. I'd left behind all my friends and family. My first marriage had broken up. I had failed big time, and that was the story that was running in my head. I was walking around just going, there's no way, there's nothing I can do, I can't do anything, I'll never get a job, I have completely messed up, and really being very, very harsh on myself. I didn't realise that this was going to be so significant, this inner talk that I'd been giving myself, having been submerged in negativity for so long. It had become this way of life for me. So rather than following my dream, I decided that we would Seth and I decided to start a business together, which we did, and we put everything we could into it, and it was going really well, until the finance was pulled from underneath us, and we lost absolutely everything. It was a complete epic fail, in every sense of the word. So we lost our home, we lost our savings, we eventually lost the car. The car was repossessed. We lost a lot of our self-esteem, and yeah, I mean, you couldn't really sink much lower than that point. And I remember we had nowhere to live, and Seth's sister offered to take us in, and it was it was this time of year. It was just starting to get cold, and we were living in an Ayrshire cottage with no heating apart from a central open fire. And every day we had to go out and collect firewood for this open fire. And of course, it was a country estate, a beautiful country estate, which had gone into rack and ruin, really. I mean, it really was on its last legs. And this cottage was freezing, leaky. It was just, yeah, not so much fun. But it was surrounded by these beautiful trees. And there was this one tree in particular, this great big beech tree. And I went out walking to collect the firewood for the day, and okay, this tree started to talk to me. And I seriously thought to myself, okay, I really have reached rock bottom now. I am a senior executive, still in my head. I've had my own business. I'm a real grown-up, and this tree's just started talking to me. I've lost the plot. I didn't know which way to turn, but I thought, right, I'll go with the flow, I'll listen to the tree. And I sat down by the tree and had the inclination to sit and write out the ideal life, the life that I really wanted. And I imagined a big house where friends and family could gather, and in my head I actually visualised lots of boots, welly boots, all different sizes, big boots, tiny little boots, mid-range boots, all the way underneath these coat pegs. And that's how I envisaged this house, where everybody could come and stay and be looked after, and we'd have this great time. And I wrote down lots of other things. I'd be a writer, and I'd write from home and start a healing business and all these things, and wrote them all down faithfully as if I'd already got them, as you're instructed to do in all the law of attraction books. And then I promptly lost the piece of paper, which is meant to be the best thing to do in any kind of manifestation technique. You're meant to throw it away. Well, I didn't throw it away. I was quite miffed, actually, that I'd lost this piece of paper, because it'd taken me over an hour to write it all out. But I'd lost it, and funnily enough, it came back nearly 5 years later, and it was a 5-year plan, and pretty much everything on that list had come true. And so, onto the happier part of the story. As we were still living in this cottage, and Seth's sister said to us, guys, I'm really, really sorry, you're going to have to look for somewhere else to live. And we had nothing, we had nowhere to go, we really didn't know where we were going to go. But I'd written down this plan, so I thought, it's there. And Seth went back to bed and pulled the covers over his head. I didn't want to look at it, so I said, well, I'm not going to let this get to me, I'm going to go out for a walk. And it was a gorgeous sunny day, so I went off walking. I was collecting bits of sticks as I went along. Lovely, gorgeous sunny day. And a car pulled up alongside me on the walk, and it was the owner of the estate, and they just inherited the estate, and they were starting to do some work on the big house in the grounds. And we'd met a couple of times when we'd been out walking, so we did know each other. And she pulled up alongside me. She's extremely posh, so she said, round to the window, she said, darling, you look like you could do with a coffee. What's wrong? Come and chat. So we went and sat by her Argo, and we had this long conversation, and I just kept on talking and talking and talking, blah, blah, blah. The coffee went cold, I was still talking. And Lina said to me, listen, she said, come with me. I've got a few notes to write. Come with me. I'll have a think. You come with me. So we went along, and we drove down to the main house. And we walked all the way round and all the way up to the top of this house. It was on 4 floors. This is it was a mansion house. And all the way back down again to the kitchen, and I hadn't even realised that the place was empty. I'd been talking so much, I hadn't realised that there was nobody living in this house. And all the while I'd been talking, she said, "How would you like to live here?" And I'm sure I pinched myself, you know, I really did think I was in a dream. Oh, that would be amazing, but you know our situation, you know that we can't, there's no way that could happen. Thank you, but you know, it's just not going to happen. And she said, "Darling, I know that you've written it down. I know you've got dreams, and I know you've written them down. And when you write down your dreams, and you start to believe in them, and if you can let them go, that's when the magic happens." So she said, "Why don't you go and talk to Seth and see what you can come up with?" So I went to talk to Seth, jumped on Seth's bed and said, "You'll never guess what, we're going to live in a castle." He's just like, "Yeah, whatever." And so the upshot of that was that we managed to pull together enough, just about enough, with the help of a friend who was also looking for somewhere to stay, and we moved into the castle. And we were meant to be there for a few months, and we were there for nearly 10 years. And we lived this fairy tale life in this amazing castle for nearly 10 years because of the story that I'd written down. And the funny thing was, I remember we'd been there probably about a year, and I remember looking along the hallway, and we'd had friends and family to stay, and all the coats were hung up on the coat pegs, and there was a line of wellies, all different sizes, exactly as I visualised. So the power of visualisation, and certainly the power of words and the words that you use with the stories that you tell yourself, has become the guiding force of my life, I think. And several years elapsed, and we made a film called The Power of Words, which you've probably already seen, which has brought us international recognition and a publishing deal with Hay House. Change Your Words, Change Your World was published shortly after that. So just those stories that we're telling ourselves they're just so important, and most of the time we don't even know they're happening. You know, you're walking along, you can have a story that's running along in your head, and because you've got so used to that little voice that's chattering on in the background, you don't ever stop to question it. And during the past 10 years, I've really studied language and how we absorb those stories. How do we create those stories in the first place? And all the neurological research that I've studied suggests that up to the age of 7 years old, we don't have much control over what goes in. You know, we're in the theta learning stage. Our brains are open to everything that's told to us, everything that we experience, everything that's shown to us, demonstrated to us. It all goes in, and it goes in without a critical faculty. We don't develop our critical faculty or our filter until we get to 7 years old. So I'd like to ask you a question. Would you trust a 5-year-old to run your life? That's what most of us are doing, unless we consciously engage with the stories that we're telling ourselves and look at them and take them out and dust them down and say, does this still work for me? Is this actually what I believe, or is this what somebody's told me during the course of my life? We don't change those thoughts. We don't change those stories, and they run in the background unconsciously, and they keep us going on this path we don't even understand. We're not even aware. I'm going to introduce my lovely husband, Seth. Thank you very much.
You see, that was the headline act. I'm the one that was hiding underneath the bedclothes. I don't get out of it very well, really. Yeah, the comic effect, obviously. So, my amazing superstar authoress wife has chatted to you, and I'm going to have I've only got about 20 minutes or so, and what I'm going to do, I want to focus what I'm going to chat to you about. People have asked me to talk about how we communicate with our children. So, can we okay? Any of you here have any children? Any of you here know any children? Any of you here hate children? Sometimes? Yes? Okay. So look, guys, yeah, so a little bit of my background in mindfulness and working. Now, mindfulness, when I first started out, wasn't even really a buzzword. No one knew what mindfulness was. It's part of the Buddhist path, of the Eightfold Noble Path, and it's one of the important parts of the Buddhist path. And now it's become very, very popular because it's so successful. It's becoming part of psychology because it actually makes a difference when you bring it into your lives. And that breathing exercise you did just then, how you change your body phys, your brain chemistry, and what happened to you in just a couple of breaths is a really good thing. But I think I need to kind of get us going again because you're just going to go on. So I'm not going to put you on it for a while. I mean, I'm not going to ask you to meditate for a little while. But I want to give you a little bit of background for me, because I think it's a good place to start. And for me, my practice is really to be still. Because I'm not very still, really. I move around, I was a dancer, I do lots of theatrical things, I'm a producer, I'm a director, I work in TV, I work in media, for all of my life, really. And that's kind of what I do. My parents despaired of me. You know, what is he doing? I have no idea what he's doing. You know, what is he's mad? I don't know. Where did he come from? I don't know. At this point, I will point out I am adopted. So they could kind of realise that probably when they opened the package, it wasn't quite what it said on it. I discovered very early on that there's a spiritual aspect to ourselves, and this is what guided me and helped me, and continues to guide me and help me. Anyway, I got to the point and I thought, do you know what, I need to put some of these things down. I want to write them down, I want to share them with people, because I keep getting asked the questions. And I'm not very good at reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps kind of books. So what I did, I put it in a narrative, because I wanted to show you that when you do a mindfulness practice, or you do any of these practices, you don't wake up the next day and go, oh, it's happened! You know, it doesn't happen like that. You know, first time I went and I thought, right, you know, I'm going to do a bit of mindfulness meditation, sat there, learn the breathing, it was fantastic. Well, that's it done. Great, next day I look for enlightenment. Where was it? You know, what's going to happen? And I kind of ended up with me again. Didn't you? Of course. So, getting back on track, which was a good thing. Within us, we often have the unrealized child. Yeah? And she's there, and she's often feeling small and vulnerable, worried and anxious, and she kind of can stay with us. I'm saying she, guys, because there's more of them than us. And she'll stay with us throughout our lives. And often, as Andrea said, these are where the words will rise from, which inform how we feel about ourselves, what we think about ourselves, in fact, what we say and what we do. Yeah? Is that okay? Now, there's the other aspect of that. There is our parents' voices that remain within us, don't they? Yeah, which can be brilliant, because there's parents in here, and of course you're all perfect parents, so of course thank God for that! So many amazing, wonderful parents. Amazing, wonderful parents, put your hands up. Okay, some of you, self-talk is not good. But the thing is with our self-talk and parenting is that often when we come into that connection with young people, what can rise up in us is the things that we've got from our primary socialisation. You know where I'm going with this. It's what how our parents spoke to us and what they did with us. Now, I came from a very extreme situation when I was young. My sister is probably still recovering from this in many ways. And I practiced my way, I think, to a safe place, which travels with me, and I practice this every day. I've learned that vulnerability is okay. I learned you can feel safe, and you can feel love, and you can feel strong within you. And that can become stronger and brighter and brighter and brighter and go out into the world. And that's fantastic. But people ask me, okay, how do we speak to young people? Jessica, close your ears now, I'm giving away secrets. How do we speak to young people? Okay, guys, I'm going to have to move a little bit here, but I was working with a lady, this is up in Avonmore, and she was the head of drugs and alcohol awareness for youth in the country, and she gave a spiel, she gave a talk, and I went up and spoke to her afterwards and said, okay, come on, what is it? What's the one thing you would say to us? And she said, maintain dialogue. Whatever happens, maintain dialogue. Maintain communication. Okay, the words that we use are vital. But how do we do that? How do we maintain dialogue? When in fact, no, don't do that. I don't do that. Just go put that down now. You know the things that rise up in us, and before we know it, there's your father, there's your mother, and we have it, don't you? Look in the mirror. Oh my God, I'm turning into my mother, and my beautiful wife. Because I love her very much. She's wonderful. That says that, doesn't it? Yes. Quite a few things over the years. So what happens if this rises in us, and it comes at us, and it comes out before we know it, and we just do it, and we find ourselves shouting, or we find ourselves acting it out. Is that okay? You okay with this? Because obviously you're perfect, so let's see other people who know what happens to us. Now, we don't want to confront that. We don't want to come up against that within ourselves, because Buddhists look at things called aversion and attraction. We either push stuff away, or we pull things in. And we want to pull in a really nice idea of ourselves, and we want to push away the bad idea of ourselves. So we get caught in this sort of repetitive kind of action. But let's think about working with young people. Let's think about working with our kids. How do we maintain this dialogue? How do we do this? How do we keep the conversation going? Well, as Andrew was saying earlier, the first thing you have to define within yourself is something called empathy. Now, obviously, I don't want to patronise you guys, although I love to patronise, it makes me feel superior. But empathy is an easy word to say, but it can be quite a tricky one to find sometimes. Now, empathy, I just like to think about empathy that I can feel what you're feeling, or I can get an understanding of what you're feeling. Is that okay? But there's two parts of it. With that also comes a cognitive aspect of empathy, which is going to be, I can understand a little bit about your situation. It rises at the same time. Is that okay? So you've got empathy. How can you empathise with your kids when they're driving you mad? What happens generally with the young people is that we will react to them, we will just explode. And what happens when it comes from this aspect of ourselves is we react to the stimulus, we react to what happens in front. Is that okay? I'm going to move quite quickly. So when you react to something, you are not in control, you're not actually in any way able to have cognitive understanding of what you're doing, it just happens. And that's why that happens, or the which is a verbal way of doing it, happens. And we start to play out. Remember I told you about your parents' voices that come in? So you start to bring out those ways. You can't help it, because inside there's still that hurty little you that's going to react the same way. You've got this collision of two yous. You've got the collision of the self, which is small and felt the pain, and you've got the collision of the parental word, or the teacher, or the bully in the school who was there at that formative time, and the way that they speak. You okay with that? Mm-hmm. Right, so we're just getting a little bit of understanding here. This is an important part. So, let's scroll back a bit. The empathy. It has to begin with ourselves. Is that okay? It has to begin with ourselves. Ooh, how do we empathise with ourselves? How do we get this, this space? How do we get this connection with ourselves? And simply with mindfulness, and we've got a mindfulness teacher in here, Lizzie, who can go on a course and learn more about this in time. What we do, we sit and we try, no we don't try, we choose, language expert, we choose, simply guys, to watch it happen. Now, when you're with your kids, something's going to happen. How often do you ever get moments when you, at the end of the day, you scroll back through the day and you think, ooh, maybe that was a bit, maybe that was a little bit, ooh, maybe she isn't like that, or maybe, oops, okay, I'll justify it. So we scroll back through the day and how we've been. So this stuff rises in us, this reaction rises within us, and it sort of happens straight away. So empathy for ourselves, we're thinking about empathy for ourselves, we sit and we watch what happens. But then what we don't do is push it away or hold on to it. Because we're repeating this energetic movement, this thought movement. And I'm a thought person, I'm an image person, I'm an energy person. And Andrew will describe it to you much better in words. So what you find, that anger that comes in, that rises, or that frustration that rises, or that pushing away and just dropping, there was nothing there, I have no reference to what you just said. It will not exist in my world. Be gone. And I have worked with parents who do the other bit. You will do this, you're going to like what I do, you're going to be who I am because I want you to be that, because I never was that. So anyway, without going to the complexity, I believe in the simple. And the simple coming back is that when you sit and you listen to yourself and you hold yourself in a place of safety and love. Thank you. What happens? That's all right, do it again. What happens is that you'll become aware of the stuff that rises. And the idea is not to hold on, not to push away. And not to hold on and push away means not to judge. Not to have a go at it, not to get angry at it, or not to want to change it, but just to realise that it happens. You okay with this? So, scenario, in the kitchen, smash! Fuck, what have you just done? What have you done? Slowing down. Now, the impulse happens straight away because that's where it's coming from. It's coming from right down to the amygdala, which is going to hit you with the cortisol to get the fight or flight reaction. It comes from the fear base a long time ago. It comes from the fear, it's coming in from the words and everything else. But really what happens is anger rises and it takes place. So, as you practice, bit by bit, you become aware of this emotion that rises, this impulse that rises. And that's the first thing and the most important thing. The empathy is, can you become aware of that as it rises in somebody else? You with me on this? Because empathy, it's all very nice to be empathetic with each other when you're really nice and lovely. You're lovely, aren't you? You're lovely, I like you, you're like me. Actually, you're a bit worried about me at the moment, but I'm not surprised. So, empathy. And from empathy and from this place of watching and knowing, you're not going to say, I'm rubbish, I'm bad, I'm this, I'm that. You're not also going to say, my phone goes off, but I don't care. You're not also going to say, wow, I'm amazing, I'm wonderful, I need to have these feelings. You can simply be. And I think that's one of the most important things, is about the simplicity of being. Is that okay? How can you just be with your kids, rather than have this explosion? Now I'm going to keep moving, because I want to get to a little bit of the instruction here. So, empathy, sitting. Mindfulness teacher there will help you how to do this. You're sitting very still right now, I can see this. Because what happens is energy and emotion is very, very powerful, it takes over. The next thing from that is we can allow compassion to arise. And compassion is that feeling or that sensation, I want to make it better. I want it to be better for you. I want to make the world a better place. The compassion is what rises from empathy. The compassion is, I want you to feel happy, beautiful, amazing, fantastic. I want you to do this. And we want this for our kids, don't we? Oh, maybe not. We do not want them! So it comes. Now, but empathy has to come first, because you cannot just manufacture compassion. If you try to, you'll go to all of these ideas of self-learning and teaching, and you will try all these different avenues, but it won't be occurring within you, it won't be rising within you. Okay, what's this got to do with reprimanding the kids? You just smash this. Okay, compassion arises from empathy with yourself. Empathetically connecting, feeling and noticing your emotions as they arrive, seeing them and go, whoa, that's a very powerful burst of anger or jealousy or anxiety or whatever it might be. And then from that moment it arises, you can go, but I love you, I like you, you're me, this is important. I'm not that. That is not me. How often do we see, if someone has an angry moment, I'm trying to be really PC here, pisses you off. When that happens, do you see that? You'll see that, and you'll say that stands for them. Oh, so-and-so is a bit of a, or today, that's that. We'll see the condition, won't we? And we'll hold that for the whole person. We do the same for ourselves, because that's where it comes from. Okay? Basically Ericksonian stuff. Am I doing okay?
You do.
Brilliant. Now, from compassion for ourselves, allowing this sense that this suffering that occurs, this suffering that rises in us, this anger is suffering, anxiety is suffering, stress, panic attacks, this is suffering. This suffering that arises, we're now aware of it, and we can aware that it can cease, and the compassion comes through us when we realise that we can take away the causes of that suffering. Okay? So compassion is that feeling as your heart expands and grows outwards to meet that impulse. And then out of that comes the action. And action, I just call loving kindness. Is that okay? Loving kindness? But loving kindness is your action. Rather than that, or the choosing to see this or expand, you actually be the love that you have for your child, which probably wasn't there. It didn't come for you on that day at school, that day at home. It didn't surround you and feel that. Now this is EQ stuff. And the Buddhists say, that the more thoughts are negative, the more negative emotions will feed those thoughts and vice versa. Okay, so let's scroll back in the last 5 minutes. We've got here to think about now the kitchen has just gone over and something's broken. They just smashed something, they've just done something, it's pissed you off. And this goes ahead of you as well, because we are all children as well. It can happen with your own parents, it can happen downwards and outwards of people at work, what have you. So how does mindfulness help us in this bit? Well, it's hard. The first 200 times, it may not become. You may get it wrong. You little... Ah! Almost caught it. But Buddhists have this idea that actually what can happen is you can become aware of the urge before it rises. And we have this idea which is called surfing the urge. And we use it when we're working with addiction. But when the urge comes in, this powerful thing that takes us, you surf it. And what that means is you don't push it away, you don't hold on to it, you just let it go through. And you can actually watch it and almost dare it to get stronger. And of course, everything then disappears. And Nietzsche, this idea of impermanence comes into a thing. But this anger you have is not there all the time. It doesn't just stand for all that you are. It just rose out of that moment. It just came out of it. Okay, so by allowing ourselves to become still, allowing ourselves to breathe, allowing ourselves to have the empathy for ourselves, which is the feeling of watching of these emotions as they rise, the compassion for ourselves, I want to feel better about this, can start to grow. And we can practice this, And then from that we can practice loving kindness, which is our action, which is into communicating with our children. Okay, so moving, segue, in compressed time space, to the final bit, the communication, the actual communication. Right, so we're talking with the young people, we're talking to parents. Generally what we'll do is we won't actually talk with them. We kind of, what do? Kind of get lecture someone said. Who said that? Yes, actually, we talk at them, we tell them, we've already sorted out, we know what's right, we know what's wrong, we count all the way through us, that's what happened in my life, that's how it happened before us, I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, because this is how it's going to happen, I'm going to tell you what you should be, bloody well be doing. Or, we go, what's wrong? What's wrong? What is it? What? I know you're sort of worried, but I don't know. So we don't actually have a connection. So, what do? Now, maintaining dialogue means, first of all, being able to be yourselves. And that's not the person that's small and was suffering, or the person that was causing the pain and suffering, but to be the person that is kind, loving to yourself. And that's the person that needs to occur, and that's being, it's not doing. Sorry. Is it okay if I go about 2-3 minutes? Don't say yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the being. Now, when you're being with a child, it's called non-directive communication. You find that you actually come alongside, and you're not willing or wanting to impose your energy state, your emotional state upon the child, the young person, or the old person, or the colleague at work that's just pissed you off. Is that okay? Yeah? Alright, so let's work with this. you haven't exploded. You practice 200 times, and when on the 200th time, it's always coming, it's coming. I just watch it come, and I watch it, it goes again. Oh, that's good, it actually goes, that's fine. Right, okay, let me pass through this, let me find my equanimity, let me find through my breathing, well said again, let me find this sense of love, this sense of peace, the sense of self, and let me now reapproach. And it's decentering, it moves, it gives you a little gap between the emotion rising and your reaction. Because normally, that won't you up, didn't it? Normally, you're just going to go, smash, bang, and you're going to, it's just, do you know what I mean? It comes out, doesn't it? It just comes out, flies out of us. And the thing when it flies out, it hits you, is the stuff that hurts us and really gets us. Because it's blind. It has no meaning, it has no motive. So motive has to come from intention. Intention, again, cannot arise without compassion. Intention is something you need to set every morning when you get up. I'm going to leave feeling people better than when I met them. You know, I want to leave everyone feeling better than when I met them. So, now the conversation. How's school today? Well, that's going to be a bloody good conversation, isn't it then, you know? But really, when you're sitting on the site, how was work today? So kind of what you're saying to me then is it wasn't particularly good? Nah. So I guess you're feeling kind of negative about this, aren't you? Yeah, right, so you don't really like it? No, so you're not really feeling enthused? No, I'm not, so you're not getting enough of that. You can find that from the smallest reaction, from the smallest murmur, there's a way of walking with somebody, which is different, but it requires you to be with them. So the first practice of parenting and communication, maintain dialogue, is to be quiet and nurturing, empathetic compassion and loving kindness. And if you look up and you Google non-directive communication, you find you don't impose a direction. You walk with them and you listen and you ask and you reframe. So, yeah, it's hard at school. So what you're saying to me is you're not really enjoying school and it's not giving you any pleasure at the moment. Yeah, that's right. Now, what we usually do is we want to impose the answer, don't we? Yeah, we want to go, yeah, well the answer is, and we're guys, so obviously we know we have the answers, this is for the ladies and all of them here, okay? Is that right? Yeah, okay. So what happens is, we think we know what the answer is going to be, which means we're not listening, and the main point about right speech, which is a part of the Eightfold Noble Path of Buddhism, right speaking, so just a recap to finish. How do we maintain dialogue with our young people? First of all, we come to ourselves with the kindness, with empathy. And the empathy is noticing what arises. Secondly, we allow ourselves the compassion to grow from that, the loving compassion to ourselves. Thirdly, the action will come from that, of loving kindness. What is it I will do to make it better? Is that okay? How we maintain dialogue? We don't impose pushing away or drawing towards, we come alongside in that state and we engage and we ask the questions and we can reframe and come back to that and reframe and come back. We're not looking to change or to do that way. Is that okay? And I'm going to hear for however long afterwards you can have a chat to me, but I think I better finish saying I've got massively over. Alright guys, so look, first of all, can you give Mrs. Gardner a round of applause please? Everybody, give me a wave.